Hello, I am Reverend Irene Smith, and I'd like to welcome you to Generationally Speaking. Here at the table, we come and we discuss life issues, no matter what they might be. As we sit at the table with each generation, we all learn, we all grow, we all are inspired.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Generationally Speaking. Hello, I am Reverend Irene Smith, and again, I welcome you to Generationally Speaking. I have my wonderful co-host, Minister James Durham. You know him as that cowboy fan. I might as well get it out of the way. Go ahead, Minister Durham, talk to us.
That's me. I'm a cowboy fan. Glad to be here as always, Reverend.
I promise you that they would be back with me, and here they are. Pastor Shamika. Something's got me. Pastor Shamika, she's taking a little time off. As you know, she just birthed the baby, birthed the ministry, and so she needs a little time. So we are thankful that she's still with us, but she needs a little more time. Our special guest today is someone I have known for so many years. But you never know a person. You think you know them, but you don't know them. And when I read her book, let me hold it up. God's Plan, Live, Love, Reset, God's Plan. When I read her book, I realized how little I knew about my special guest, Karen C. Baker. Hello, Karen.
Hi. How are you? Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be on your show. I really appreciate it. Thank you again.
I mean, not only is the book rich that Karen has written, but what she does day to day is really a blessing. And if you contact her, I promise you, she'll change your life financially as well as spiritually. Because Karen really is an awesome, well-rounded individual. And she's weathered the storms of life. And because she's weathered the storms of life, listen, my friend, she can teach you some things. And I thank God for it. In reading her book, I learned so much. So Karen, let's get started. Okay. I was reading the book and I got to page 6. And I stopped in my tracks and I said, wait a minute, I had to underscore it. So I'm just going to read it to you. Page 6. Sure. It says, numbers and rules only require learning. Emotions require sensitivity and patience. Tell me more. Growing up, when you started this book off, you started off by talking about having a successful career. So that's numbers and rules. And then you talked about just being a single woman, emotions. So talk to us a little bit about your formative years.
Well, coming to this area many years ago, it was about trying to figure out who I was as a young woman and what my purpose was and how I could make a difference. And in that space, you kind of try different things, that work. I love music. Yeah. So, my background is music. I was doing the nightclub thing, R&B, jazz, and all of that. But on the side of working, I always ended up in an industry that required numbers. And the crazy thing about that is that I hated math. Like math was my worst subject in school. It's like, okay, God, really? You're putting me in an industry and I don't like numbers. So, God works stuff out. And so that's why I had to kind of give that differentiation when it comes down to numbers and rules, because that's a learned behavior. I learned that. I didn't like that. I had to learn how it worked versus, your emotions. That is more of an internal sensitivity type of thing. Emotions, you really can't teach emotions. That's something that you have or you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Either you're an emotional, sensitive person, caring, or you're not. I mean, it's kind of hard. There's a serious difference. So learning and growing up as a young woman, like being in the nightclub and singing those, sassy, jazzy, emotional songs, that was just so me. I fit right in that spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learned how to deal with money. I learned the different plans. I learned by my mom saying always, she used to say to me, it doesn't matter how much money you make,
Mm-hmm.
you need to only live off of 50% of it.
Mm.
50% you need to put away for the future. And as a teenager, even like my first job that I had, lemonade stand, she was like, no, you're not going to spend all that money. You're going to split it in half, and half of it you're going to put in the bank.
Wow.
And half of it, you have different responsibilities in the house. So she always put that in my head, and I really couldn't understand it until I became on my own. And so living on your own and making your own money and having your own bills and your responsibilities, you learn quick. You learn real quick how that thing works. And I mean, there are some things that I still didn't put in the book, but like when I was 20, I built my first home when I was 20.
Wow.
Okay, in Silver Spring. And because of the things that she told me, what I did was literally my mortgage was paid because I rented out rooms. So I was still in college, okay, still making money, still putting money away, investing, but I was living mortgage free at 20. So just not being afraid of taking a chance on you, knowing that God's got you.
Wow.
God's got you. No matter what you do. And that's kind of how I lived my life. My mom has kind of ingrained that in me to say, you can be anything that you want in life. You just have to take the first step towards whatever it is. And if you fall, you get back up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I've kind of lived. So that's why you hear that in the first chapters in the very beginning of how I started.
Reverend, if I could ask a question
Sure.
here, because Karen, you've already dropped so many gems in just the brief 5 minutes we've been on. So that principle that your mother taught you, that was an excellent principle for living life and being financially responsible. So what I want to say to you, so you got that lesson very early on, and I just by the way you shared the story, it was a shock to your system. So those viewers who are watching, to hear something like that, that sounds very radical. And if you were to say that to me, I can tell you like that right now, I haven't been living off of half of my income. But if you say that to me, that's a shock to my system, but it sounds like a great principle. So how can people bring themselves to a place where they can swallow something like that and then implement that in their lives? What advice would you give them?
Well, you have to start out slow. And I've been doing the financial planning, advisor, broker, national financial speaker. I've been doing that for 34 years. You have to start out slow. You can't eat the whole elephant at once. So the rule of thumb, if you talk to a financial planner, is 15% of your income you're supposed to put away for retirement, investing, anything that deals with future money. When I teach class, because I do a lot of teaching at various levels, whether it's at a university level or workshops or seminars or speaking engagements, I tell people to push the letter. If the rule of thumb is 15%, start at 15%, making sure that you have a budget. Because, people think, oh, I got money, I don't need to have a budget. You need to have a budget. Mm-hmm. I don't know all of my high net worth clients work from a budget because 99% of them are business owners. So they have to know to the penny what's coming in and what's going out. Everybody needs to know to the penny how much money is going out. I can tell you every bill that I'm spending and how much it is to the letter, but I did that when I was 20. Okay. So being able to pay yourself first, that's the mindset that we have to have. You're always doing something to pay yourself first. Not Verizon, not T-Mobile, not your mortgage, not your high-priced car if you're living in an apartment. We're not thinking about the right things. Our priority isn't right. You know what I'm saying? It's about us. You got to have an emergency fund. There's certain things that we have to have: savings accounts, an emergency fund, retirement, life insurance, college savings if you have children. There's a lot of different accounts depending on who you are, what your financial goals are, but you got to start with the 15%. Then of course, we got to tithe. You got to add that to your budget. So everything to the penny starts with a budget. That first.
I like that. Don't eat the entire elephant.
Don't eat the entire elephant. You got to take small bites.
I like that.
Yeah. And, when you talked about that, I know for some people that I can hear them now, how in the world do I get started and where do I start? But you wrote on page 9 of your book,
okay.
You said, I intended to teach my babies to earn like I did, to work like I did, to plan and to strategize like I did. I intended to teach them to make something out of nothing. But I also intended to make sure that if worse came to worse, they were set for life before they even got out of the womb. Mm. Now, Minister Durham, that brings some heat right there.
Yes, indeed.
That's like thinking about strategizing. When I read it, I'm sure people were thinking, oh, she's talking about children who were born. But no, you said before they even got out of the womb, not once they're walking toddlers, not once they're teenagers, but before. Where does this come from, Karen?
I'm sorry, Irene. When you ask me questions, I'm thinking back in the days that we used to talk at the church, at the small church, and just have a good time, like in the lunchroom or something. But it's when you dream. I was raised to dream.
Ooh.
That's deep.
My mom used to say to me all the time, always go after your dream. Mm-hmm. Never let anyone put that light out. Mm. Your success will always depend on how much you believe in God first. That's like first and foremost. Whatever I say, God has got to be first. So that's a given. So I don't have to keep repeating that to the audience. But you have to have an internal flame of the things that make you happy. And whatever that is, there really is a market for it. You just have to believe in you. You have to believe enough in you to do whatever it takes to make that journey. So when I talk about my children in the womb, not even knowing if God was going to bless me with children, in my mind, I had to do something so that I would not have to struggle financially, and neither would them. They, whether it was 1 child, 2, 3, or 4. So that starts again with the basics. Because as a young financial advisor, as a young agent, I'm around money. I'm around people. I'm strategizing. They're telling me what their goals are. And it's my job to figure out a plan to get them there. So if I'm doing that for my clients, I've got to be the example for myself. And then I'm leading a team. So they have to see that I'm doing what I'm saying. So I don't have a choice. I have to be able to put something in place for me so that the young women that I'm mentoring, the young men that I'm mentoring, the young agents, the young advisors, the young speakers, so that they see, regardless of what happens in your life, because the longer you live, you are going to have some adversity.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you have the adversity, it's how you deal with the adversity. So if I can be that example to show you that, yeah, we slip and we fall, but we get right on back up and we say, thank you, God, for allowing us to have a second chance. God, I don't know how I got here, but I know you are the reason why I'm here today. And I'm living proof, I'm living testimony, because the doctors don't believe I'm still standing.
Come on now.
And I'm like, you just don't know my God. You don't know my God. So I did exactly what I do with my clients. I used myself as an example as a young woman. And I tried different things. Some things worked, some things didn't. But the things that did work, when people say, I've never heard about that plan, that plan doesn't exist, or I'm like, no, let me show you, because I got it. I have one of those. Just because you've never seen it and no one has come to you with it does not mean it exists. And that's been my mission for over 30 years, especially with our community, because we're the ones that are like, I'm not doing that. That costs how much? I'm not spending that. I'm not going to do that. And my thing is, we have to be like the Rockefellers. If you look the Rockefellers up, John D., over 100 years ago, had an idea of utilizing insurance to help create their wealth. Mm-hmm. Now, over 100 years later, 170 heirs later, John D. has been dead over 100 years. Do you know they are still crazy wealthy? And the heirs are still living off of what he did. Those strategies I teach. The strategies haven't changed. They've been around for centuries. It's just that our community doesn't utilize it. So I utilize it. So I'm the example. I'm the example. And I use some of the tips in the book about how, I didn't work for 18 months due to the cancer. Mm-hmm. How many people would survive that? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? How many people would survive that? Right. You got to have different things in place, but it starts with the budget.
Yeah. But Minister Durham, go ahead.
So what I hear is you're not just a planner, you're a serious planner. If anyone wants to travel this path that you're sharing, they're going to have to become a planner. I mean, to say, you're going to prepare for your children before they leave the womb, that's some serious planning. And I know you teach it, and I know you can't just give that to someone in a soundbite, but could you say something to how the audience or someone watching could, if they're not a planner, if they don't plan or think at that level, how they can intentionally work to develop themselves to be that kind of a planner, to have that kind of a mindset?
Well, first of all, everyone, by the sound of my voice, has to have a financial planner, not just any financial planner, because there are financial planners out there that don't know the plans that I'm speaking of. You got to be really careful. You got to deal with a broker. And a broker is a person that can write any plan that's out there, not just an individual agent. Not to say that some of those companies or those carriers don't have some of the plans, but the plans that I'm talking about, out of the 900 and something insurance carriers that are out there, the plans, there might be 20 companies that actually have those plans. Mm-hmm. So every person that you sit down in front of will be like, oh, I got you. I got that plan. You want one? Okay, I'll get that for you. But the truth is, when you read the fine print, because I've been on both sides of that. I've worked with an individual company, and I'm independent. I'm independent now, but I started out working for one company. And that's how I was like, I see the plans that you have and I see what you're trying to get me to sell to these people, but I can't sit across from them and have them tell me what their financial goals are, knowing that the plans that you have don't fit what they want. But in order for me to keep my job, I got to sell those plans. I can't do that. Mm. So that's what made me, as a young woman in my 20s, say, I can't do that. I'm just going to find these brokers that I can connect myself with, where the plans that they have, an individual agent cannot access. Make sense?
Makes sense.
So I don't want to mention names of companies, but the companies that you see on TV don't have the plans that I'm talking about. Yeah. The companies that I represent, they don't need to advertise because they have brokers that break down their plans and match the person with the plan. So it's kind of different. It's a different scenario than the world is used to, because you're used to having somebody come in and sit across the table and tell you what you need and blah, 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 blah. I'm not talking about that. I'm listening and I'm probing and I'm asking all these questions so that I can find out specifically what you need and what you want. And then I find that company that matches your goals. So it's a little different.
So in other words, I think going back to Minister Durham's question is that if I'm not a planner by nature, or I have my knowledge of finances is limited, I need to connect to someone who has the expertise that I need so that they can help me slowly move to the place where I want to be in my finances. Because it's in other words, while I may be able to go a distance, I can't competitively or completely go all the way because I don't have the tools that I need in order to make these finances grow in the way I want them to grow.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So there was another quote on page 13. It says, and that was under your financial foundations, financial education. And I think that's what we've been talking about here. Mm-hmm. And it says, people who enter high school and college with a financial mindset, like I was fortunate enough to do so, have a huge advantage throughout life. I entered college already thinking like a business person about how to create and sustain wealth and return on my invested labor. Now, most kids I know going to college, they're trying to get a student loan and they're just trying to get to college. You added a whole nother layer.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to owe anybody. I'm a frugal person by nature. My mom, God bless her soul, she would say, girl, you can make a penny holler, because you're not trying to lose anything. But during that time, I made, I think as a 20-year-old in my 20s, I was making close to 200,000 back then.
Wow.
So me being able to take 10,000 and invest it 15,000, to put it here, or to try this particular plan or this particular account or mutual funds or whatever. Because remember, at that point, my mortgage was paid, remember? Mm-hmm. So all the money pretty much that was coming in, it was just like, I was a young woman with money coming in and I wasn't trying to flash it or, so people didn't know the amount of money that I was making because I wasn't wearing it on my back and I wasn't driving it. And that was one thing that my mom said, you don't need to flash your wealth. Don't flash your wealth. Well, who cares? They don't care. They're not doing anything for you. Make your money work for you. So as a young girl in my 20s, I lost money. And I tell my clients, if you're going to invest in the market, that's money that you don't need. Because the market is up and down, it's volatile. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So whenever you put your money in any vehicle that's attached to the market, that's money that you don't need. If it grows and it gains, that's a plus. But don't put your mortgage money or your rent money in, that's not something that you should be doing. So that's a mindset. So for me, I had it, so I could do it. So I used myself as the guinea pig. Most people don't do that. A lot of, agents that you sit in front of, they'll talk about plans, but they're not the product of a plan. That's like me going to buy a car, a Mercedes car from a Toyota dealership. Why would I do that? You got to think the same way when it comes down to your money. The person that you are talking to about money, you got to make sure that they are financially savvy personally. And it's a question that you should ask. If you're putting your financial house in their hands, you got to make sure that they're tight. Because if they're not tight, how are they going to help you?
So we hear a lot, Minister Durham, about, our people perish from a lack of knowledge, that we should, write a vision and write it clear. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we're hearing even right now from Karen, the importance of having a vision, the importance of, gaining knowledge. But when we think about a 20-year-old, mm-hmm. a 20-year-old with this kind of maturity to have a house that she's built, rooms that she's renting out and earning money that way, and then doing some other. Are you still singing as well?
I'm more on the healing path now due to the cancer.
No, this is when you were in the 20s. When you.
Oh yeah. I was singing. I was still doing the nightclub thing. R&B, jazz, and I was a director of a fashion career school. So I was doing all of that and going to school full time.
Yeah. So Minister Durham, you have a college student. What do you think about all of this?
Well, I'm thinking that it's important. I'm listening from definitely a parent's perspective, and I'm listening to what her mother instilled in her. And that's so important. And I think that any of us, regardless of what age, because sometimes you say, okay, well, my time is up. I missed the boat. So I'm not going to worry about it because I don't hit this age threshold. But we should always want to get more knowledge and pass that on and instill this kind of mindset into young folk, because naturally a 20-year-old, if they're not exposed, or any young person, if they're not exposed to that, they're just going to want to have fun. But it's something that was instilled in you, and we need to do our best to not just instill it in our children, but to instill it in anyone that we are coming across. Exactly. You mentioned you mentioned mentees, people that you're working with, your neighbors. We need to instill that into our community so that we can have wealth throughout our entire community, because we don't just want to be blessed. We don't want God's favor just for our household and our family. We want to share God's spirit. We want to share the blessings that he has. So we want to share that mindset. So every person as an individual, we need to listen and take these things in and do our best to educate ourselves and be better in that area, but also to share it and pass it on.
Definitely.